Hello everybody, and welcome to a video on the Heezy Game Media YouTube channel. I'm Heezy, and today we're talking about a movie that I just saw in theaters that I was really excited about. Today we're talking about My Hero Academia Heroes Rising. Before we get into this review, there's going to be two parts. The spoiler-free review, and then my thoughts with spoilers. So, there will be a spoiler warning before that, so make sure that if you don't want spoilers, to leave once the spoiler warning happens. Before we get too far into this, don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button. It really does help a small growing channel like this, and I really appreciate it. So with all that being said, let's talk about it. My Hero Academia is just my favorite anime that's running right now. It's easily something that I've related to that I haven't ever related to an anime in this way before. And I actually did a video on my contest that I won where I got to get some art done of me, and I chose to have my art be me in Deku's costume. So, and the reason for that, we'll put a link to the video somewhere probably. But honestly, like this anime is something that I really love, and I wanted to go into this movie with no expectations and nothing, because I love the anime so much. And I actually didn't watch anything going into this. I didn't watch any of the trailers. I didn't read anything. I went in completely blind, and I did that very, very purposefully. And I've honestly never done that with a movie since the age of the internet, I think, without like having no interest in the film before just like going to it for fun. This one I specifically avoided things. And I'm really, really glad that I did because it gave me an interesting perspective on the movie, I think. With that being said, let's get into this. Before we get into this, there is a small spoiler for the anime. I watched the dub, so I'm two episodes behind while recording this. But I talked to somebody who's not behind on the sub, and they said that this hasn't happened yet. Either way, small spoiler for the anime. It really doesn't matter. But all of Class 1A is there, and the reason they're all there is because they're in a work-study program, which means that they all have gotten their work-study licenses. This means that Bakugo and Todoroki have now passed their whatever exam they need to take, their class, and they're on this island called Nabu Island with the rest of the class. So, small spoiler, but it really doesn't matter. Nabu Island is about 1,000, I think, people they said. They might have said 1,500, but it was definitely somewhere in that range. So it's a really small group of people. And this island used to have a pro hero that's now retired. And so what they've done is they've taken Class 1A as an entire class, and as a work-study program, they've placed the entire class there as a group of heroes, as the heroes for the island, with no supervision. And it's pretty cool. I think the class does some interesting stuff. Everybody but Bakugo really is participating as far as helping the islanders in their day-to-day, going finding puppies in trees and stuff like that. It's really interesting to kind of see some of the smaller things that heroes have to do in this hero society. And you get to see Class 1A kind of do some of that. There is there's a part in the film, early on in the film, where while they're doing hero work for the island, they get a call. And it's a girl saying that she can't find her brother. Deku goes out with Sue and Ochako to try and find this child. You find out that really the little girl is trying to prove to the little boy that heroes aren't that great. So she ends up yelling at Deku, and some stuff ensues. Eventually, Bakugo and Deku find out that this little girl doesn't like heroes, and that this little boy wants to become one. And it's pretty cool. Mahiro, I'm not sure how to say the little girl's name. She's really interesting. It's very clear that she's not excited about these kids taking over on the island, and that she's just not a fan of heroes in general for some reason. But she has a big fan of her dad. Katsuma is the little boy, and he very much wants to become a hero, but there's a point in the film where he has to come to terms with things about himself if he wants to become a hero and what he's capable of. The rest of the story after that consists of finding out that something that happens early in the film is now trickling down and potentially impacting the kids, as there's a group of villains that wants to rule the world through power and have the powerful rule, and these are a group that are led by a villain called Nine, and Nine has joined the Quirk Augmentation Program from the League of Villains. and by doing that, he hopes to become powerful enough to basically take over the world. Mummy is one of his assistants. Mummy's quirk uses bandages to wrap things up and then animate them. Chimera is next. Chimera has a quirk that makes him a chimera. He is a lot of different animals and has a couple of different powers due to the number of animals that he is. He also has an interesting motivation in that because his quirk is so different and so weird, he was made to feel like a monster growing up. And it was an interesting motivation to see from a villain and a character in this world. And I think that it speaks to, how we're treated and how we treat people. And obviously, this is just an anime, but it is interesting to see that how that has an impact in the world of My Hero Academia. I think next up is Slice. Slice's quirk is really interesting. Her hair becomes blades, but also it looks like she can shoot her hair at people as blades. So it's a pretty sweet and interesting quirk. These villains team up and they're looking for something on Nabu Island. These are probably the strongest villains that most of the classes faced. Really interesting fights, especially for those who might have been involved in the fight with Overhaul. Other than Deku, I don't know that any of the heroes have faced any villain that's close to as powerful as the one as 9, really. And it's really interesting to see how they have to try and work together. I think it's 20 or 21 heroes in the class. I should know that off the top of my head. But either way, they have to work together to try and beat this extremely powerful villain. And Deku obviously doesn't have a little girl on his back to let him, go Super Saiyan. So it's a little bit harder for him as well. And you kind of see that the villains have some tragedy in their lives, and they decide that they want to take it into their hands to make it so that the world is better for them and not for the people that it's currently good for. The question starts to become, is it even possible for Class 1A to win? Or do they have to wait for other heroes to get there? And they have to kind of come up with a plan to see, can we do that? It's a really interesting movie and definitely something that I would recommend. You can skip to the end of the video after the spoilers, and you can see my overall score for the video, for the film. With that being said, spoiler warning. Like I said before, I didn't watch anything about this movie going into it. I didn't read anything. So I feel like my initial impressions were pretty not tainted going to this. They got there, they told a little bit about what was going on, and then they kind of just moved into the film. One of the things that I didn't know early on is, how do I feel about this? Like, why are the kids on this island? Is this just because, they needed this for the film? Or could it be story driven? And I just didn't know how I felt about it going in. And I was also a little confused as to the League's involvement, but it kind of fleshed itself out. Other than that, it was a well-paced film that I really enjoyed. And I have some critiques, and I have some things that I like. And I call this the #CouldBeBetter segment. It felt like class was doing too much day-to-day stuff. Like, even in a city of 1,000 people, you would think that you would have some kind of law enforcement. Like, obviously there's very little crime. So, one, why does the island need a group of heroes? And two, what does every city need a hero? Like, what's the point in the heroes on this island? I didn't really know what Maru's motivations were about hating heroes, and I wish that had been fleshed out. I might have missed it. I don't know. I've only seen the film once, but I definitely didn't get why she has such a problem with heroes. I also think that, it would have been cool to know. One of the things that people really like about the anime, right, is those moments where Stain is involved and understanding why Stain is the way that he is and why he thinks the way he thinks. I think that this little girl deserved the same thing. The other thing that I would say is, I don't know that I was prepared. This is not a could be better as much as a problem for me. The moment where Deku gives up his powers, spoiler, the moment he gives One for All to Bakugo was really painful. And like the way that it dragged out his time with One for All going away, and how long it took, and like how you were having to deal with it real time was pretty difficult for somebody that relates to him. I don't know if that's a could be better oral of it, but I certainly felt intense feelings about this. One of the other things that I thought could have been better is I still don't know the chemical that was in Nine's arm. Like what, or going into his back, I should say. Like what was it? I don't know. So he has these big things on the back of him that are shooting him some kind of purple liquid, and you see the purple going through his veins. I believe, but I don't know what it's for. It looked like it was regenerating his cells so that he could continue to like walk and stuff. But if he just has those, I'm not quite sure why he needs the small child's uh, healing quirk, which is kind of what he has, where he has a quirk that does cell activation, and somehow this villain Nine needs that quirk to like stay alive. And but at the same time, while he's fighting, he's getting this purple stuff injected to him that looks like it's doing that. So, but I don't know what else it's doing. I just am not sure. And maybe I care too much. Like this is just an anime film, but I legitimately that like going out of the film, that was the question that both Devin and I had. So if you're gonna like make it a point to have this stuff injecting and like zoom in on it, well, tell me what it is. I want to know. The other thing that I would say is that so one of the things that happens in the film, and kind of the biggest thing that happens in the film, is near the end when Bakugo and Midoriya have teamed up, and they can't seem to beat this guy, and they're gonna lose. So what ends up happening is Deku gives Bakugo One for All, and they have to make that decision, and it's a very intense moment in the film, and we'll kind of get into the parts of that I loved. But I don't really love how Deku gets One for All back. The thing is that they very much set it up so that it was very clear that Deku was going to go back to being quirkless by doing this. And there are some really beautiful moments where you see One for All leading Deku throughout this fight as he's trying to win with just the embers of One for All left inside of him. He's trying to win, and one of the things I love happens later. But the issue that happens is how he gets the powers back. So first of all, you didn't know if he was going to get the powers back when it happened, when things were happening. You probably could assume, right? Like it's not like they would just. I mean, maybe they would, but it would be really weird to have the main character suddenly be quirkless. But basically, what happens is One for All just decided to be in two bodies at once, for a small time without actually having Deku lose the power. I don't know. I mean, there was also a line about how Bakugo had fainted before the transfer could complete or something like that. I don't think that's what happened, but either way, it was kind of a weird way for Deku not to lose his powers. And then Bakugo waking up and not remembering it was also weird, and something that it would have been interesting had... I think it would have been more interesting if Bakugo, from a character development standpoint, would have given One for All back. I don't know if that's possible. I am a huge fan of the show. I don't read the manga, but I don't know if there's a rule about that's been covered somewhere else. I can't think of one. And in doing my research, I couldn't find a rule that said that this couldn't happen. But I think that it would have been cooler if Bakugo was like, "Hey, I did this for the greater good, but I want to just beat you by myself, and I want to beat you, Deku." And it would have been a very good character moment that I think we missed out on, that I think makes a lot of sense for where Bakugo is heading and where Deku is. I think Deku would take that challenge. I think that, but it seemed like Deku knew he couldn't get it back, and that was part of the sacrifice, and it made that moment bigger. But I don't know. You could have just as easily said, "I don't know if I'll get this back," and then had the exact same moment and then tried to do this. But either way, that's super nitpicky. It's just how I would have done something, and not that big of a deal. I just thought that moment itself was a little cheesy and weird. I think the other thing is, I wish that this would have been a moment where, if you're going to specifically point out to everybody that Deku has multiple quirks like they do in this film, um, which I think if you read the manga, you already know that for what it's worth, but it hasn't really been fully established on the TV show, from my understanding, that he actually can use multiple quirks. Uh, but he doesn't in this film. They point it out because he has all of those extra quirks, and so when Nine, whose ability is to steal quirks like One for All because he's compatible with One for All powers, it's what happened during that augmentation program. So he's trying to take his quirk. You find out that he can't because he has too many, and he can't steal all for him because it's too many quirks, or One for All because it's too many quirks. At the same time, why not use that as an opportunity to let Deku use one of those quirks? And it could be because the movie is written separate from the manga, and because of that, you maybe the manga's already done it. I don't know. I haven't read the manga. So if you have, just leave a spoiler warning and you can tell me. I'm happy to know. Just that basically, it would have been cool if they used that as an opportunity to give him a second quirk to use to win, instead of giving. I think that it would have made what happened make more sense. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me that you would do this whole giving of One for All thing to Bakugo and then kind of play it off when you could have won a different way. You didn't have to give One for All to Bakugo. Maybe Bakugo and him still team up, and in doing this, Deku learns a second quirk, and that's how they end up winning together. It doesn't have to be the way that it happened. It was sweet the way that it happened. Like, that moment was cool, but it just felt short on reasons why things happened and how things turned out. Like, at the end, it became pointless, which kind of minimized the film. So those are the things that I thought could be better. Still thought the film was great. And let's talk about the things that I thought went really well. And that's, first one is Deku and Katsuma's conversation, where, he comes to apologize because what happens is, for those who might not know, the sister tries to trick them, saying there's a villain in town. We find out that she hates heroes. She tries to trick Bakugo and Deku, and Katsuma comes back and says, I'm really sorry, and thank you for being an awesome influence. And they talk about wanting to be a hero, and the conversation that they have, I just think is really sweet and really represents what Deku is about. As far as just wanting to help people. And it really goes to it. The scene really plays to Deku's strengths as a character, and it was really beautiful. I think the class's teamwork was also super awesome. Anytime that Iravati was on screen, I was a super happy guy. She's great. I love her power. I love her hard work. I love her dedication. And a lot of class just got to team up in different ways, and it was really cool to watch. Whether it was Red Riot being used as a shield so that Todoroki could get in, or any of the other stuff, I just thought it was a good time. Chimera's motivations were also something that was really cool to me. I think I kind of made that clear at the beginning of the video, but I actually found his character really interesting. I think that it is interesting to see somebody that is entirely motivated by feeling like he doesn't fit into the world and just wanting to change the world because of that. I am not saying that I think that what he was doing is right or anything. Far from it. I think he was, going about life the wrong way. But it is interesting and understandable what his motivations were, and that's just good writing. I just understood. I don't know. I just felt empathy and felt bad for Chimera, and I don't often feel that way about villains in anime. I think that the other really great part is actually the moment and the decision that Deku has to give One for All to Bakugo. I thought that was really beautiful. I think the score of the film around that scene and just the music that's playing while all of it goes down is really beautiful and enhances it all. And Bakugo's big moment itself is really cool. Getting trapped and all for one or one for all obviously expands the quirks that you have and makes them stronger. And his ability to melt stuff out of his way during this battle is pretty amazing. And that victory that he grabbed through the use of this and how he looked, all of that was really cool, really beautiful, and well done. Uh, and then Deku's discussion with All Might, where he apologizes for giving One for All. He said he did it because he knew he had to save those lives, and he was always going to do whatever he could to save people, and this was something that he could do, and that's why he did it. And that conversation was really pretty and beautiful. And while I cried a bunch during the film, my wife's not really a huge crier, and even that moment got her. So overall, there was a lot of things that I would like to have been better, and some writing issues that I had. But other than that, I really, really loved this film. I would give this like a 4.0 out of 5. I think this is one of the better anime films that I've seen. Anime to film stories. A lot of my experience with this is Dragon Ball films and stuff like that. But I mean, just look at like the Full Metal Alchemist movie is bad. Like it just happens that a lot of the times that these things happen, the movies are bad, and this one was really good. It was just a good movie. I think that you could actually probably go into this and it gives you enough information to enjoy this film without ever having to see My Hero Academia, and that's pretty cool. So 4.0 out of 5. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Overall, really enjoyed the film, and I'm excited to see what everyone else thought too. Give this video a like. Hit that sub button. Thank you everybody, and we'll see everybody next week.